the tension mounts in that music. I just love that theme. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to another stream. It's Thursday. And you know what that means? Well, it means there's a stream for one, but it also means that today we are going to be doing the episode about case. That's the theme of this episode. It's all about case. And so if you have doubts about case, they will hopefully be laid to rest today. I have a little book to wave around too. See? So if ever there's any doubt, we can just sort of shake the book around. We don't really have to read it, but we can shake it around, and I think that's good enough, right? So you will now experience the pain of any linguist who writes about case, because we all have to come up with elaborate ways of avoiding saying case in phrases like in the case of blah, 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 or in case, just in case. You get to use instance a lot. In this instance, the case is blah, 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 blah. Oh, hello. Any recommendations for purchasing this book? I'd imagine it's sold wherever fine books are sold. The story behind this one. So this is actually, it's kind of like like a grad level textbook in case. So if you were doing like say an early year PhD course in case, this would be appropriate, or maybe like a late undergrad. The story with this is I bought this at a conference. It was at York University in Toronto, and I was a baby linguist. I was an undergrad going to my first linguistics conference, or maybe my second, and I was so excited to get to the book sale that they had there. And I just looked around, and books are expensive. I was a student, and so I thought, well, if you're gonna have to know anything, you're gonna have to know about case. So I picked it up, and yeah, it's a good book. It has a great chapter called "Slaying the Ergative just the Ergative Dragon." So yeah, we will confront the Ergative Dragon ourselves today. So that's the plan. Today we are going to be working back on the Gal languages. We're going to be working on Lenethailef and its earlier iterations. And we may just get a chance to work on the sister language to Lenethailef, which is so far called Lang 3A. Those who have been with us for a long time may remember that Lenethailef comes from Lang 3B. The name Lenethailef comes from Lang 3B, and so there's also a Lang 3A that we need to consider, and we're going to look at how the case system develops from protocol into Lenethailef, and then also into Lang 3A. Birai, everyone. Birai. Okay, so I guess that's the basic plan. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of more teaching-y stuff at the start, because we're going to be dealing with case, and we're going to have to know some terminology. And so yeah, that's going to happen first. Then we're going to jump into Lenethailef, and then Lang 3A. That's the basic plan. All right. So first of all, we will have a little bit of moving windows around. Lucy has told me that I say the goofiest things when I'm moving windows around, so I won't deprive you of that. So I'm going to get open a new spreadsheet, and I'm going to I'll use this as kind of like a blackboard. Yeah. Okay, so let's welcome YouTube first. Okay, I got my screen set up. Got the font size increased so everyone can see all the hilarity that ensues. And let's say hi to YouTube. YouTube, welcome back. We are about to jump in and talk a little bit about case. We got a lot of stuff to deal with in the world of case. You can read whole books on it if you want. We're going to do a little bit of clearing up of terminology first, and then we're going to see what we can do after that. But the terminology, that's the stuff that we got to get down, because it actually does get a little bit confusing, and the terminology is among the worst in linguistics. I think case terminology is pretty bad. So, without further ado, let's go to the side webcam and let's see a blank screen. Excellent. Yeah, okay. So, case. I'm going to start us from like the very, very basic bottom floor of the case skyscraper. I'm going to be mixing metaphors like it's no one's business here today. Just fair warning. Okay. So what is case? If I were to give a kind of dictionary definition of it, I'd say it's a system of marking nouns for their relationship to other elements within the clause or sentence. And if we can get a little more specific, case is a system for marking dependents relationships to their heads. So within a phrase, we have the notion of a head, which we can kind of pre-theoretically think of as the most important element of that phrase. So if we look at a phrase like the big owl, what's the most sort of what is this basically? A big owl is basically an owl, right? So we would think of this in a pre-theoretical sense as a phrase, a noun phrase headed by the noun owl. It's a noun phrase because its head is a noun. So whatever kind of element is the head of the phrase, that's what kind of phrase it is. So rules the world. Is this a kind of world or is this a kind of ruling? It's a kind of ruling. So we have a verb phrase with a head rule. Now, I did mention pre-theoretical a few times during that because there are different theories that use the word head in slightly different ways, but let's stay sort of zoomed out in this kind of basic linguistics level. All right, so the big owl rules the world. Together, we have a nice sentence. The big owl rules the world, noun phrase and a verb phrase. So this is some old style syntax, but sentence equals noun phrase and a verb phrase. The big owl rules the world. That's just a little aside for those who are interested in the more syntactic side of things. Obviously, sentences do get a bit more complicated than that as time goes on. So we talked about heads. And we talked about how case is a way of signaling the relationship of a noun to the rest of the clause. Or if we think of it in terms of heads, we have the head of the clause, which can be thought of as the verb. Again, being a bit pre-theoretical here, because there are other theories that will tell you different, but. So the big owl rules the world. Fundamentally, this is an instance of ruling. We're talking about this is the action. The big owl is ruling the world. So the head of this is rules. The head of this clause or this sentence is rules. So the things that interact with, the things that sort of hang off of this head are its dependents. So in this case, we have the head, which is rules, and the dependents. We have two dependents. The big owl, that's one, and the world. So here the head is a verb and the dependents are two noun phrases. The big owl and rules the world. Okay. So the big owl rules the world, head, dependents. What is case? Case is a way of signaling the relationship of these two dependents to their head. What's another kind of... So this is a clause. That's one type of head-dependent relationship. Another one is possessor-possessed relationship. So the big owl's rule, or maybe say dominion. There we go. So here we have a possessor and a possessed, a possessum, if you will. So the possessor and possessum, meaning the thing possessed. So the big owl and dominion. Dominion. Don't know why that jumped around like that. Okay. And so here we have we actually have the head being a noun phrase, being a noun, dominion. So overall, the big owl's dominion is a noun phrase. The head is the possessum. So the dependent is the big owl. I'll write that. I'll write these a little bit more clearly like this. So we have the big owl and the world. These are the dependents. Here we only have one dependent, the big owl. So in both cases, the big owl is a dependent. Okay, and actually you can see the start of something that looks like case here, because note that to mark the fact that the big owl is a possessor, we have this z morphology on there. So we're signaling the relationship of the dependent, which is the big owl, to the head. Quick hydration break. Righty. Quick aside to look at the chat. We do have you can still absolutely add your names to the fan service language. I would say put it in the Discord and just at me on there, or at Lucy, and one of us, and we'll get it sorted out. And if you have a preferred meaning, be sure to include that there. I don't have the spreadsheet open right now, otherwise I'd do it now. Okay, so here we are. Yeah, Sauten's got some comments on case. Okay, we will get to these. We will get to these comments. Although Sauten, feel free to hold court in the chat. For now, I'm just going to get through all of these definitions. So, case is going to be helping us to clarify the relationships of the dependents to their head. So it's a form of dependent marking. Case is a form of dependent marking that occurs on nouns. Okay, so let's get out of abstract land a little bit, and let's do a little bit of like conlanging just for the purpose of making up an example. So say we have a word for owl, which is something like hoo-hoo. Say we have a word for world, and the word for world is maybe something like patu, hoo-hoo, patu. And to rule is a verb like ila. Okay. So the big owl rules the world. We could just say the owl rules the world to make our lives a bit easier here. The owl's dominion or ruling. So if we were to make let's assume that we have an SVO word order. So if we have an SVO word order and nothing else that we know about the language, if we want to say the owl rules the world, we would say something like hoo-hoo ila patu, which we gloss as owl rule world. Okay, just ignoring agreement. There are two relationships. There are two dependents here, right? We have owl and world. So if this were a language that used case marking to mark the specific relationship of the dependent, the noun phrases, to the head, the verb, then we would put something maybe on the end of these. You might be thinking, well, we already know which is which. Something is ruling here and something is ruled. And we know which because we know this is a subject verb object language, right? So that's sort of irrelevant. Why do we need case? Well, language sometimes does things redundantly. You do get case marking in languages with a strict word order like this. Sometimes you have both, sometimes you have neither, but sometimes you have both. So let's take that case. So if we were to mark this, we need something that cries out saying, hey, I'm the subject, right? So let's say we have an affix like ta, and ta is going to say, I am the subject of this sentence. We'll get a little bit more into what a subject is in a second. But we're going to just say subject marker. And we need something for the object. So let's say something like nu. Nu is going to say, I'm the object. So huhuta ila patu nu. The owl, subject, rules the world, object. Okay. All right. So, case. We are now entering the domain of case because we are distinguishing the subject from the object. And notice if, say we didn't have a fixed word order language, say we had a free word order language, then we could say something like huhu ta patu nu ila. And this would be owl subject, world object, rule. And crucially, the state of affairs in the world that this describes would be the same. The owl rules the world, because the relationship of the owl and the world to the situation of ruling is expressed with these little markers on the nouns. Okay. All right. So far so good. We've got these little markers on the nouns. They're telling us what the relationship of the nouns is to the rest of the phrase. Let's move on. So I said subject and object, like those are things that everyone just can easily identify. But it's not necessarily the case. There's a bit of complication with what a subject and object is. So in the sentence, the owl rules the world, I could tell you that the owl is the subject. Then we have our verb, and then we have our direct object, which I'll just abbreviate to object for now, the world. But, me just telling you that isn't especially helpful. So we have to come up with a more general way of thinking about what a subject is and what an object is. And unfortunately, it's a bit complicated. Because let's take a first stab at it and say, well, the owl is the thing that's doing the action, right? The owl is the thing that's ruling. The world is the thing that's ruled. So it's the thing that's getting the action done to it. So we might, as a first attempt, say, well, the subject is whatever's doing the action, and the object is the thing that's having the action done to it. But consider this. The world is ruled by the owl. Now we know English is an SVO language. Let's just take that as given. So English is SVO, subject, verb, object. So the thing that's coming in front of the verb we expect to be the subject. But here, it's no longer the thing that's doing the action. It's the thing that's having the action done to it. And so this is a passive construction. And a passive construction in English, and in many languages, is defined as a construction in which the thing that has the action done to it is the subject. So we can see that subject isn't something that has a clear semantic meaning. It's not just the doer of the action. It's more of like a structural position in the sentence. And in English, we have verb agreement with the subject. So we have subject-verb agreement. So if I change the world to the worlds, we'd have to say the worlds are ruled by the owl. The owl has dominion over the many worlds. So that's a diagnostic for the subject in English. It's the thing the verb agrees with. So it's a bit abstract, this notion of subject. And in different constructions, the mapping between the subject and a particular semantic rule, like the thing that does the action, let's call that the agent. So here the owl is the agent. Agent. Owl is agent. I'm running out of space. Is the agent. In a prototypical active sentence, like the owl rules the world, the subject is an agent. In the prototypical passive sentence, the subject is not the agent. It's not the thing that does the action. It's the thing that has the action done to it. So what could we call that? We could call that a patient. It's something that is undergoing the action. So owl's agent, world is patient. So we have now three kind of levels of analyzing things. We have, let's see if I can go down here. We have subject versus object. We have what I've been calling subject case versus object case. We'll make that a bit more technical sounding soon. And then we have agent versus patient. So instead of subject case, we have a fancy name. This is nominative. And here's where the nomenclature comes in. This is a name that we've inherited as linguists from antiquity, from the classical period. Nominative and accusative. the naming case and the case of accusing. It's actually a poor translation from the Greek original, which I actually don't know. But that's why we call it accusative. All right. Okay, so we have these three layers. Let's give them different names. So here we have case, nominative versus accusative. So in English, these are things like he versus him, she versus her, they versus them, I versus me, we versus us. These are all nominative accusative distinctions, right? So the owl rules the world. Say the owl is a he, we say he rules the world. The owl rules the people, he rules them. Or if the owl is a she rules the world, she rules them. Not she rules they, right? Because in English, the direct object is going to want to take the accusative form. So we have this distinction, nominative versus accusative. Then we have subject versus object, and this is called, not case, but grammatical function, or a grammatical relation. And this is that kind of abstract thing. This is the position in the sentence that the main verb agrees with in English. So this is the thing that the subject, that the agent occupies in an active sentence and the patient occupies in a passive sentence. So this is this kind of abstract layer. Why have I separated? Well, okay, let's finish up and then I'll talk about the separation. Why have I separated agent and patient from subject and object? It's just because of things like this passive situation where there's not a match. It's not that the subject is always the agent. And so we can call this a semantic role, or a thematic role, or a theta role, which is probably the term that, different theoretical schools use different terms. The one I'm most familiar with is theta role. Okay, so, see, excellent stuff happening in the chat. Okay, we are going to continue. So you know now why I've separated the idea of a grammatical function and a theta role, because they're not always one-to-one. Why have I separated grammatical function and case? Well, because nominative and accusative, these two categories in English, these things like he versus him, I versus me, you find accusative in instances when it's not a direct object. So there's an example like me and him are fighting, which is looked down upon prescriptively, but that's part of English, right? So here we have two subjects. The whole subject is me and him, and they're both in the accusative case, yet they're on the subject. So we get these kinds of interesting situations. And we get other situations where different cases show up on the subject. English doesn't really have these anymore, but it used to. You get other cases than you'd expect showing up on the subject sometimes. Cool. So the three layers: case, grammatical function, and theta role, semantic role, thematic role, whatever you want to call it. Okay. So English has a remnant of a case system in its pronouns, and then it has that apostrophe S thing that looks case-like, that expresses possession. Okay, so we've climbed up to one step of the mountain. We've come to base camp, or case camp. Just let that sink in for a minute. Okay, what next? I want to make a point about the names of cases, because this is something that's come up on the Discord. And by the way, people watching on YouTube, there's a Discord. Check out the link in the description. The names that we give to cases are just that. They are given to cases by people who are talking about them, people who are analyzing them, linguists in general, but also others. And it's not always possible or advisable to compare something called the nominative in one language to something called the nominative in another language. There's always an aspect of case which is language specific. So we have rules that we use to name these cases. Like generally when a linguist is analyzing a language and the linguist sees there's a case marker that goes on the subject of transitive verbs and the subject of intransitive verbs, I should talk about transitivity in a second, then that linguist is probably going to say, gee, I'll call this nominative because this is kind of what we call nominatives. It's not the case. It's not so that there is some sort of abstract nominativeness that different languages just sort of partake in. These are sort of analytical categories that we put on the language. So what the language has, you could think of it as like form A, form B, form C, and form A is used for subjects, form B is used for direct objects, and if we're talking about English, form B is also used in conjoined noun phrases, so me and him, and form C is used for possessors. But to make our lives a bit easier, we do give them these names. It's just not always true that you can compare them simply from one language to the next. Because one language might use, in English, we have the accusative case that shows up in these conjoined noun phrases. This is not true in all languages that have nominative accusative. In many of these languages, these would show up as you'd really expect them to as nominative because they are subjects. Okay, so Logan saying in the chat that thematic rules and theta rules are different things. They can be considered different things depending on what theoretical persuasion you have. I'm trying to zoom out a bit. But yes, they're called theta rules because it's an abbreviation for thematic rules. Then there are people who have separated those two concepts. But we could be very general and just think of it as a semantic rule, if that's easy. Okay, so where were we? We've climbed up to case camp. We have been talking about case, grammatical function, semantic rules. What else do we have? Well, I mentioned transitive and intransitive verbs. Okay, so we could think of, let's think of two sentences like, the owl rules the world, and the owl rules. So one of these has a direct object and the other doesn't. And transitive is just a way of saying has a direct object. So this is a transitive sentence. This is an intransitive sentence. Yes, I spelled that right. Okay. So why do I bring this up? Well, let's look at our little toy language here. I'm going to try and clear out some of this stuff. Get over there. So we have the owl rules the world, transitive. We could also just say the owl rules in general. So that would look maybe something like huhuta ila, owl. And now we're more sophisticated. We're going to say nominative instead of subject case. Let's change all of this. Accusative, nominative, accusative. Okay. So the owl rules. Whereas these mean the owl rules the world. Okay. Super. Note that when we have an intransitive sentence, we only have one dependent noun phrase, one argument in this case. So, I said case again. See, it's impossible. Why do we have to call this? Why do we have to use the same thing here, huhuta, as here, huhuta? I mean, because there's only one argument here, we could just as easily say hu nu ila. It's kind of arbitrary. So there's no ironclad rule that says you have to treat the subject of a transitive sentence the same as the subject of an intransitive sentence. So let's come up with some. It looks like an accusative, right? But when this happens, we come up with a different nomenclature, and here's where it gets kind of tough. Kind of annoying, actually. So when we have this situation, so let's call this situation A. Subject of intransitive looks the same as the subject of transitive verbs. And the object of transitive verbs looks different. So you get one marker. Oops, there we go. You get one marker, say ta, for these two, and you'll get one marker nu for this one. That's situation A. Situation B, which this little toy language gives us the example of, puts the subject of an intransitive marked the same as the object of a transitive verb. For historical reasons, we call this nominative and accusative. For historical reasons, we call this ergative and absolutive. So if you've ever heard of ergativity, that's what this is referring to. It's referring to a situation where the subject of an intransitive verb is marked the same as the object of a transitive verb. In that case, we don't call that marker accusative, we call it absolutive. And we call the marker of the subject of the transitive verb ergative. So erg stands for ergative, abs stands for absolutive. I'll just write that down so everyone can see. And to make it easier to talk about these things, we have different abbreviations. So subject of an intransitive verb, we abbreviate this as S. Object of a transitive verb, or let's go subject of a transitive verb, we call this A, which stands for agent, but I've already worked so hard to distinguish subject and agent for you that I would just like you to think of it as A. And the only reason I bring this up is because you will see this everywhere that this is discussed, and you kind of have to know it if you want to read any of these papers. And then the final thing is P, which is the object of a transitive verb. So S, A, and P, we have these three participants. Here we have S equals A and P. Here we have A and S equals P. When S equals P, that's an ergative absolutive system. When S equals A, that is a nominative accusative system. So I should call this situation B. So situation B is ergative absolutive alignment. That's the term morphosyntactic alignment to describe the difference between these two kinds of systems. Here's nominative accusative alignment. Okay. So we have three. Let's see if I can just reiterate that, because I think it is a lot of stuff coming at you, and I think this is an important point. So S is the subject of an intransitive sentence. So here, I will just write down owl equals S. Subject of an intransitive sentence. The owl rules. Here, owl is an A, the subject of a transitive sentence or clause. And here, world is P, the object of a transitive clause. So S, A, and P. Nominative accusative alignment is when the form used to mark S is the same as the form used to mark A. So in this case, ta. Leaving out P. So P only occurs in transitive sentences, and we call that the accusative case. This is the nominative accusative system. This is the nominative accusative alignment. Okay. Yeah. Ergative absolutive systems. Ergative absolutive alignment. This is when you have A marked differently than S and P. I don't know why that happened. All I wanted to do was make it bold. So that's it. That's what ergative absolutive alignment is. So now you can all make ergative absolutive systems. Let's see. There's a bit more. Scrolling down. So you have S, A, and P. Those are our three things. And let's use the forms ta, nu, and so we have three case markers. Ta, nu, and let's say le. What are the different systems that we could come up with? We could come up with a system where S is marked with ta, A is marked with ta, P is marked with nu. This is nominative accusative alignment. Get these over a bit more over here. We could come up with a system where S is marked with nu, A is marked with ta, P is marked with nu. Ergative absolutive. You can maybe see where I'm approaching something here. Okay, what are the other options? Logically we have more options than this, right? Well, we could also have maybe nu, ta, ta. So we group A and P together. So that means when you have a transitive sentence, both participants are marked the same way, and that's different from the way that an intransitive subject is marked. All right, so I should warn you that that's ultra, 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 ultra rare. This has been called double oblique alignment. But I wouldn't be surprised if it had like 50 other names because linguists love naming things. Double oblique. What else could we do? Well, we could just have ta, ta, ta. Right? Just make everything the same. This is called neutral alignment. And you could argue that that languages which don't mark case effectively have this. So English in the nouns is neutral, in the pronouns is nominative accusative. This is very common. And what else do we have? Well, we could do ta, or maybe like nu, ta, le. 3 different situations, 3 different cases, tripartite agreement, or tripartite alignment. And that's pretty rare as well, because you can see it's not strictly necessary because you never have both S and A or both S and P in the same sentence. So these are 5 different types of alignment. And it gets worse. It gets more complicated because there are also systems that split different types of these arguments even below the S level. So you have, we've been talking about S, A, and P like they're all the same, but there are some languages, for example, which split the S. So some S's take ta and some S's take nu, depending on what? Depending on how agent-like the intransitive sentence is, or the subject of the intransitive sentence is, and how patient-like it is. So let's look at an example. So if we have, let's make up a new verb for our little language. Let's say bohu. Oops. Yeah, bohu. I realize I did this wrong. That's better. So the owl eats. What would the owl eats be? Let's bring this all the way down so that we can see it on the same screen. The owl eats is going to be if we have a split S, it's huhu something bohu. So if this is a nominative accusative language, this is going to be huhu ta bohu, namak. If it's an ergative absolutive language, we would say huhu nu bohu. If it's a split S language, what we could have is huhu ta bohu, because eating, when you eat something, you're really doing that action. That is something that you are the agent of. So there are some predicates whose subjects are more agent-like. What does it mean for something to be agent-like? Well, when we think about how actions take place in the world, there is often something acting on something else. What do things that act on other things have in common? They have volition. They move around in the world. They're sentient. They're going around enacting their plans. Humans are great examples of things that are often agents, because we're going around, we're chopping down trees, we're punching rocks, we're doing all sorts of stuff, and we have this volition, this sentience, this ability to move and to cause change. So humans are often put in agent position. Not always, right? One human can act on another. So what makes something more of a patient? A patient is something, and we're talking here about this agent versus patient distinction, just to call back to that. What makes something more agent-like is it's sentient, it causes action, it moves, it has volition. What makes something more patient-like? It's that it undergoes a change of state. So if you think of something super agent-like, it would be like a kid throwing a baseball at a window. So the kid is the agent, the window is the patient. The kid broke the window. So the kid is an agent par excellence, sentient, moving around, causing action, willing what it does. And the window is a great example of a prototypical patient, because it undergoes a change of state. It has no say in this action. It's not a sentient being at all. It's an inanimate object that just stays put until it gets broken. Now it's important to notice that it's not the case that boys are, or the kid is always going to be an agent, right? Because the mother could scold the kid. So now we have the kid undergoing a change of state from being maybe happy to being sad. And so taking on more of the characteristics of a patient. Okay, so this is also largely determined by what predicate we're talking about, in this case, what verb we're talking about. So when you eat, you are more agent-like, because you're deciding to eat, you're causing the action on the food, you're chewing it up, you're causing a change of state in the food, you're doing this willingly most often, and you are sentient, you're able to, well, you're sentient. I don't know what else to tell you. You're sentient. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. So in a split S language, because eating is something whose subject is more agent-like, we get the marking like an A. So S equals A. But if we have a verb like, let's make up another verb. Let's make up a verb like to fall. Something like lamu. That seems like fall. So here we'd have something like huhu nu lamu, because falling is a kind of action where the subject is not very agent-like usually. The subject undergoes a change of state. Often you fall by accident, not on purpose. So this is S equals P. These predicates where S is more agent-like are called unergative. And again, I deeply apologize for this terminology. And the ones that where the subject is more patient-like are called unaccusative. Again, apologies for the terminology. Okay, so split S. So S can be either A or P, depending on the properties of the predicate. We also have fluid S languages, and it gets a bit weird sounding here, where you would have a distinction between huhu ta lamu, the owl fell intentionally, versus huhu nu huhunu, huhuta, huhunu, lamu. So in each case, this is owl, and then a case marking, and then fall. S-A-S-P. And here the change of the case marker indicates that the owl had some sort of control over the event in the case of huhuta lamu, where S is equal to A, and less in the case of huhunu lamu, where S is equal to P. So this is called split S, and this is called fluid S, which is kind of a type of split S. Okay, I think we are now at the point where we can move on. So, sorry, a lot of terminology. Hopefully this can be kind of a reference. Yeah, Logan's totally right. Unergative and unaccusative is one of the all-time worst nomenclatures in all of linguistics. Okay. All right. Okay. Whew. I got through everything, and it only took an absurd amount of time. Let's just think about YouTube quickly. YouTube. Yeah. I had to tell you at some point. I had to mention unergatives and unaccusatives at some point. Today was the day. Thank you so much for joining us. Come back, and we will do more conlanging and we'll use the terminology that we've acquired in our climbing of Case Mountain. All right. All right. Okay. Okay. Whew. So, you may be asking why I went through all of that. Oh, Lucy says I should mention Patreon. Lucy, should I mention Patreon? I don't want to be always mentioning Patreon. It feels a bit weird. But anyway, by complaining about having to mention it, I guess I've mentioned it. So there you go. That's kind of, there's something kind of interesting and sophisticated about that, perhaps. Yeah, right. So why mention all of this? Well, because today is the day where we revisit the case system of Protocol and of Lenethailef, and perhaps also of Lang 3A. And I have a feeling that this is all going to come up. Things like unaccusative verbs, things like unergatives, things like S, A, and P. So I wanted to have that language at our fingertips, so that we can do some things that are a little bit more, a little bit more out there than we normally do. Okay. All right. So, chat. Shall we welcome YouTube back in and start conlanging? I think it's a good idea. Okay. Oh my goodness. There's a wealth of knowledge in the chat about Case, and I noticed that the chat was unsupervised. Now, you may have thought that Lucy was supervising the chat, but perhaps not. And the other thing, I didn't even really get to all of the stuff that's going on with Case and ergativity, and I wanted to get to the point where we could move forward together, and also take you from the point where there's nothing, like from scratch. So hopefully then people on YouTube can watch it and sort of get up to speed later on in the future. And all that good jazz. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's talk to YouTube. Let's welcome them back. They didn't, maybe they didn't even see that last one. So I'm going to have to send them that way because we're going to probably put that in a different playlist. But anyway, let's go. YouTube. You don't know it, but we just got through an immense discussion of how Case works and morphosyntactic alignment and all of that stuff, which you can watch if you so desire. We will link in the description. But let's now take all of that terminology and all those concepts and things, and let's put them to use in our beloved language, Lenethailef. So, put me in the corner. Nobody puts Colin in the corner. And let's take a look at Lenethailef and the case system. All right. Okay, so Lenethailef and protocol. I'll just go over to protocol first. Okay, where is it? Protogrammar is a nominative accusative system. So we have a case that shows up on the subjects of transitive verbs, the subjects of intransitive verbs, and it's the same case. It's this zero-marked nominative case. We also have an accusative case for the objects of transitive verbs, which is explicitly marked as uque, the suffix uque. I have a little note here that it originates in a verb meaning to go through. So for those who are interested in proto world, maybe there's an interesting derivation there. All right. So that's our starting point. We also have a bunch of other cases which we're not going to worry about too much. And today we're going to pick up on an idea that the esteemed member of our community, Sotten, has had and has been sort of champing at the bit to get into this language, which is this really interesting idea of what we've been calling a passive case. Now, passive is usually a term that we associate with verbs or whole constructions, but we could think of it as a case that shows up in these passive constructions. What is the nature of this case? Well, the way that we have to look at it is, where's our lexicon? Here it is. It all starts out with this reflexive pronoun, l'acqua, which means oneself. And l'acqua, if we look, let's make a sentence in protocol. Let's go into the Lenethailef sheet and let's make a sentence and see what happens. So say we have something like, I don't know what, let's move this over. Oops, move this over here. Let's see what words we have. So we have a word like, okay, we have crow, huasc, crow, and then we have a verb like osus, see. So huasc osus, the crow sees. If we put this back to protocol, let's go and put the sentences over here. If we go back to protocol, we have huasahqua, crow, the cawing one. Hello, other Colin. And we have where is it? To see. Osasa. Huasahqua osasa. So, crow, see. Huasahqua osasa comes to huasc osus. Okay. What happens if the crow sees itself? We have a reflexive pronoun for that. Now, Lenethailef is SVO, but protocol is SOV. So where does this go? Where is our... where is it? There it is. I know where things are. I know things. Crow, self, see. So we have huasahqua l'acqua osasa. The crow sees itself. I see. I'm getting an interesting. I'm getting a bit of a warning here. What is this? What is this? Dear Stream Chat, We are sorry for what you shall endure this session. Dear YouTube, please consult reference material for better comprehension. Dear Colin, he's talking to me. Dear Colin, grab your nearest safety blanket, for you have spoken to the Satan? Oh no, what is this? This is... What is this? What? Okay. I think we've been infiltrated, chat. We have been infiltrated. Look. Who is this? Let's see if it speaks back. It's Satan. Oh no. We said Satan and he appeared. He has been summoned. Satan has been summoned. Okay. Okay, we have to deal with this now. We have to implement the passive case. The satanic cult of owls is upon us. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. The only way I think we can exercise this spirit is to fully implement the passive case idea. And here it is. Now, I don't know if we can get it up. Okay, good. There we are. We have enough. The passive case, unlike the other cases, comes from a cliticized object. Let's look at this sentence here. This reflexive pronoun lok in Lenethailef comes from this lakwa. So if we were to go forward in time, we have huask lok osas. Crow, self, see. The crow sees itself. This is step one. But between the protocol and modern Lenethailef periods, this lok or lakwa it diverges into two separate morphemes. So etymologically we have lakwa, which means self. And it develops a strong form, which is, lok, self, in Lenethailef, but then it develops a weak form as well, something like uk, which turns into, which ends up glomming on to the preceding noun. So we end up having uk, meaning some kind of bleached form of this case marker, of this pronoun, which means itself. So, but it's on the noun. This is really interesting. So we have huask lok osas, the crow sees itself, and then let's get some more space. We have huaskik osas, which is something like crow self see. And we can translate this not so much as the crow sees itself, but something like the crow is seen. Oops, that's the wrong one. And so what we have is a little bit of inflectional material on the noun that changes the sentence into kind of like a passive form, as often happens with reflexives, right? Oops, I'm going to hydrate. One sec. Yes. Okay. So we have two directions that we can take this. So we have, let's see, this uk, which is, I don't know what we're going to call it, because here is where it gets kind of interesting. So if we were to relate this to, I'm just going to put this down here. If we were to relate this to what we talked about in the in the segment on case and morphosyntactic alignment, we need three kind of we need three sentences. We need the crow sees something else. So let's see, the crow sees the owl. Let's see, how do we make that? Crow see owl. So this looks like huask osis, and then we need to chronomonum. Now we need to find the word for owl. All right, where did that go? That's quanum. And let's say that we need the grammar section here too. So we need the euch form. So that's an O stem, quanum. So we need quenemoich. Huask osis, quenemoich. So the crow nominative sees the owl accusative. Okay. Yeah, Ravi, you don't know what's going on. That's okay. We're working this out. We're working out this idea that Sawton has had, and we've essentially summoned Sawton in to explain this idea. And so what it looks like is we have let's write out the full paradigm. Let's go slowly and just see if we can come to terms with this bit by bit. So the crow sees the owl. This is a normal sentence in Lenethailef: nominative, verb, accusative. Huask osis quenemoich. We also have, so we can get rid of the proto call form, huask lok osis, which is the crow sees itself. And because this is a kind of an archaic form, it still has this SOV order associated with it, which is not typical of Lenethailef. SOV. Whereas here we have the more normal SVO. So if in the earlier forms of the language, this huasklok gets this lok, this thing that means self, which is actually the direct object of the verb in the old SOV section. What if it gets attached to the noun? It gets understood as something that has to do with the noun. That's the idea here. Huasklok osis, which gets worn down to huaskak osis. And so here we have what looks like a case marker, which ends up showing up on the subject of a verb that has become passivized, because the crow sees itself, ends up turning from a true reflexive construction to something more like a passive construction, which does happen. So the crow sees itself. Since the crow is both the subject and the object, it's a short skip away from that to the crow is seen. So what do we call this? That's the real question, because we haven't changed the verb at all. The same verb is still used for seeing owls and being seen. Huaskuk osis, huask osis. But here, it becomes passive. So do we consider this accusative case? So like a kind of an impersonal construction, like someone sees the crow? But if that's true, how come it's a different case marker than this one? Euch. So this is the trouble. What do we say about this construction? We can't call it accusative because we already have an accusative. We can't call it a nominative because we already have a nominative. What we might be able to call it is the start of a tripartite system. So we have a certain type of intransitive sentence. The crow is seen, where the subject is a patient. We have a marker on it that's kind of like, I don't know, absolutive? Because if you want to say the crow sees, how would we say that? That would just be huask osis. Crow see. So now we have a contrast between huask osis and huaskuk osis, which is roughly the crow sees and the crow is seen, which is kind of similar to the split S case or the fluid S case where we saw when the argument is more like an agent, it takes the nominative mark, the same marking as the transitive, as the subject of a transitive clause. But when it's more patient-like, it takes a different marking. Now, the difference here is normally when that's the case, it takes the same marking as the object of a transitive clause. But here it's taking a completely different marking altogether. So maybe what we have here is a system in transition. A system in transition towards like a classic kind of split S system where this case marker ends up being generalized and ends up being used for the objects of transitive verbs as well. So, yeah, what about that? And then we could get rid of that euch, which is kind of, I don't know, I'm not a gigantic fan of it anymore. Being on at the end of every sentence, you know, blah blah blah, euch, blah blah blah, ich, blah blah blah, euch. It's too many euch, too much of that. The crow sees the owl. So we have an interesting paradigm here. We have huask osis quenam moich, huask osis, huaskuk osis. So three cases that our nouns can take. What we've called nominative, what we've called accusative, and what we've called the third case. And what I think will happen is that this third case will generalize and turn into the accusative. And so then we have something like a split S system. So we may be saying goodbye to the old accusative marker. What do we think? Chat, what do we think? Okay. While you think, I'm going to set us up for another meme because I need to go turn on the air conditioning because I'm about to perish. So I'll be right. Okay, yeah, it's really hot again today. We had a really nice run of it. We had a really nice run of it for like 2 days where it was beautiful. Tuesday was a good day. I got to wear, a shirt that's not, a shirt with some heft to it. I don't know. Bring back birai. We got to bring back birai. Okay, we're rolling up the sleeves. We're getting back in there. So, Chad, I kind of like this. This is an amazing idea because it solves two problems. One, the problem is that these languages are never weird enough, so we have to keep going and make them weirder. So this does the job. We get a new accusative that comes through this circuitous route. First, it starts out as a passive, as a reflexive pronoun, or maybe it starts out even earlier than that as a word meaning self, becomes a reflexive pronoun, then cliticizes onto the subject noun because it's in this SOV situation, and then ends up becoming an accusative case in a split S system. I don't know. That's kind of cool. And then it supplants the old euch accusative to be a cool looking ek, which I think is a nice accusative. And it's actually quite similar to the accusative in the proto-language ukwe. So that's kind of cool, and I like that. Thank you, Sotten. Okay, we can leave the euch construction in a few sentences. Maybe what we can do is we can have, we could either do the typical thing of, in archaic phrases you have this euch, or maybe only in animates can you get this ek, because it comes from this self. Maybe we could do that. All right, we have Team euch here. Okay. The problem is euch, yeah, Moon Truthers said it right. Euch is nice, but does it really need to be at the end of every transitive sentence? It's just a bit much. So maybe what we could do is we could keep it alive in some constructions, especially in older Lenethailef, of course, will have it. But if we go back to our modern Lenethailef, we could say manthi, manthik, details to be determined. Yeah. Of course, this E is also a nice accusative. Where were we? Someone called me on the phone just there. I never turn my phone off for these things, because who calls, right? But anyway, there you go. Yeah, let's have an animacy distinction. So, uk for animates, and where did it go? For animates. Of course, month is not going to be animate. Month meaning lake. I don't know why it does this to me. There we go. Okay, cool. Okay. So, have we done justice to the passive case? I think we have a little bit more to say. Because what happens with this other branch, this lok? What is it going to do? It can still be a reflexive, but it can be an intensifier as well. So maybe we have something like, instead of the crow sees itself, huask lok means the crow itself sees. And by that, we mean like it's the crow. It is the crow who sees. It's the crow itself. The crow itself sees. This intensifying use of self. Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. So Sotten, have we done justice to the passive case? It has its eventual destiny as an accusative, as an animate accusative. For now. That's ominous. So here we can re-gloss this as emph. And we have this really rich pathway of grammaticalization. And I'd like to just, before we close out this segment, I'd like to make sure that it's recorded. So we have lok, which is, well, it's a particle of some kind. We'll just be agnostic as to what its part of speech is. Emphatic. It comes from lakwe, meaning self, or meaning reflexive. Ugh. Give me a schwa. Let me copy and paste a schwa. That's all I ask for. Okay. We've made a decision. And we've made a decision about grammar too, which is kind of interesting. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this segment for now. YouTube, you've just joined us and you've seen some spooky stuff. You've seen a ghostly purple square appear in Google Sheets, and it was the spirit of Sotten. And I hope we have appeased the spirit of Sotten for now, but time shall tell. See you next time. Yeah. We got Sotten. We got Sotten on. I had to be a bit cheesy about how to introduce the whole situation. But yeah, if I couldn't be cheesy, I don't know what I would do. Okay, but we've still got Sotten in the sheet, so I think we should do more. I think Sotten, it's time, if you're game, to collaborate on Lang 3A. So let's take a new tab. Call it Lang 3A. And we're gonna make Lang 3A happen. We don't have a lot of detail on Lang 3A. I'll show you what we have, and then we can have some fun with that in its case system as well. All right. Let's say hello to YouTube again then. Let's say hello to YouTube again. YouTube. Hello. Hello, YouTube. What? You don't say hello to YouTube? Of course you say hello to YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Welcome. We are about to start working on Lang 3A, a forgotten, neglected, just a ghost of a language that we've barely spent any time on, but we're about to do it, and we got Sotten on board, so we're going to work together. And let's just jump in, shall we? Let's jump in. Off to the side, Colin. Jeez. Okay, so what do we have here? We have the stop. We have the existing corpus of Lang 3A. Not a lot. Not a lot. So let's hide some of these. Ba ba ba. Let's hide eustamia. Ba ba ba. So I know we have, so let's start with our lexicon. Lang 3A's, this is a bit small. Lang 3A is very cursory. It's a sketch at this point. We have just a few words. We don't even have the sound changes in Lexergy yet, so we're going to have to sort of guess at a few things. So what do we have here? We have alu. Let's just take stock of the language. Alu meaning swim. We have Eidof meaning because. We have anab, meaning well. We have antop, meaning home. Atoma, meaning mountain. We have a prefix or a preposition or postposition, not sure which, meaning purpose. We have abel, meaning already. So we have some front rounded vowels here. We have azan, meaning black or dark. We have af, meaning eat. We do not have a list of sound changes for 3a. We kind of just we wung it to make a strong verb out of to wing. Fetu turned into it, so we can do a little bit of historical linguistics challenge here too. Day. So that we can say proto 3. We can look also at Lenethailef's cognates, and we can figure out what the protoform is. Yagam, meaning deed or doing. Let's bring some of these over. I don't have to type them all out. Values only. All right, let's see, what else do we have? We have the reflexive pronoun here, which is not lok, but lap. I must have written, letter critic, I must have written some sort of a sound change list. Okay, I'll look for it as soon as I've finished this. Paste, values only. We don't have a lot. Oops. A yow. It's lost a lot of, oops, what the heck? It's lost a lot of labials, hasn't it? Like is u. Umas is leave. Crow is fasp. So huasc in Lenethailef and fasp in Lang 3a. We have a P and a Q call thing going on here. And that's it. That's all we have. So that's the corpus. All right. Clean this up. And I'm going to put in the Lenethailef cognates while Sotten, perhaps you could run through some ideas. I see you've already gotten started. And so we can do a little bit of reconstruction, and then we can keep at it. We may not have cognates for all of these, but we have it for some. So here we have huasc. I'll write it in IPA so that we can reconstruct a little more easily. I don't think we have. Here we have lok. What else do we have? Swan we have, which is fire. I need a schwa. Here we go. And what else do we have? I guess I could put, I guess I could get into Lexergy. That's probably what I should do. Get into Lexergy and go through the Lenethailef sound changes. There we go. The Lenethailef sound changes, which are extensive and still slightly buggy, to be honest. But what you gonna do? I was trying to work up the sound changes for the for Lang 3A. Oops. There we go. Purple box. Okay, so then Alupa is Aleph. Anakwo Anach. Andvok. Let's see, what else do we have? We have Hazen here. We have Yarum. So we see some interesting cognate sets. We need to find the point of divergence. What else do we have? Yestach. I think we should mark where there's not initial stress. We have Astaima. What else do we have? We have Curl, we have Keul. We have Kayla. What else do we have? Lo is lo. Ma is ma. U is oof. And umas is umas. And we have some other ones. Fe. Where's fetu? Fetu is day. Heth. So we have this correspondence, ed versus heth. As for the rest, oh yes, faquale, that's already, where did it go? Heigl, faquale, where did it go? Abel, Heigl, interesting. And I don't think we have, do we have afitochwe? Let's just find out. Afitochwe avidas. Yes, that's right. So we have Eidof and avidas. Those are some interesting cognates. There is a sound change list for this language, but I kind of want to not look at it because I don't want to be too bound by the past, because I think that distance from it makes this a little bit strange, and it opens up the space to make it something a bit weird. I like weird. Weird is good. Let's see. What else do we have? Turn, become. Lafu. I'm just going to make this a bit easier on myself, which is laf. Then we have and, which is pa, and that becomes fa. Then if we go and find eat, we have fachwe, which is going to become hos. Now that's a fun one. Af and hos, cognates. And let's just finish it up. Let's get mountain in there in honor of Sotten. Apato. Aft. And this fa, which is the fa of purpose. Something like in order to, which is ha. Okay, so we have a full set of cognates here. If we were to do a bit of reconstruction on this, oops, that should be ha. What would we say? Proto 3, let's do the easy bits. Proto 3, lo and ma are the same. Umas and umas are almost the same. Let's see. What else do we have? We have this correspondence of 0 in Lang 3a and f at the end of Lenethailef, which is probably a deletion. So I think we could confidently say we have something like aluf in Proto 3, because I think it's more likely that u would reduce in an unstressed syllable than it would peripheralize in an unstressed syllable. Yeah, Proto 3 looks like it had F to H, and then 3A had H to nothing. So we have something like ha here then. And we have something like laf. And what else? Something like aft. Looks like we've really worn this down, but we've lost the F that was here. This started with an H. This is probably something like Hazan, Abidof, Aidof. Yeah, this S versus F, that's interesting. Yeah, I agree with Sotten's. Interesting. So that, yeah, we probably have fa here, fa yaw, maybe something like fa yawi to get this umlaut. It looks, and you know, there's a certain amount of humor here because we did create all of these in earlier episodes, but it's good not to remember them. I will insist on this fact, because it opens up the possibility that we can change something and that we can, we don't have to be constrained by I think it was a fairly cursory sound change job that we did back when we created Lang 3a. So I think we have a chance to make something new and greater. Elijah, you got it. Okay, we'll consider that in a second. Back to the side webcam. So I think we have something like oof here. And I think what we have to do is reconstruct the labiovelars into Proto 3, because they go to velars in one and labials in the other. Yeah, huasq. So these should all have stars on the front. And then we know that our sound changes are going to involve, into Lang 3a, we have labialization of the labiovelars into Lenethailef. We have velarization of the labiovelars, or delabialization. We have Fayawi. Then we have the question of, here we have this FS correspondence. FS. So maybe we could have something like, notice, okay, so I'm jumping ahead a little bit. I'm jumping all over the place, but we also have this OA correspondence. Look, lap. I wonder what's going on there. If I recall from my Lenethailef history, I think what happened is we round next to old labiovelars. And so that makes sense when we have the labial here and the velar here. We can reconstruct something like lak, which, hey, lo and behold, that's just like the proto-language. Yeah, I think that we are going to want to add some tone, but I do have it on good authority that there may be a very special episode about tone coming up. You didn't hear it from me. So we may want to wait until we have our very special tone episode, which may or may not be happening on July 5th. Check the Discord for the event notification in the coming days. I'll say that. That's all I'll say. I won't say any more. Yeah. So that might be a thing that's happening, and there may be even a very, very special guest. Anyway, moving on. So we have this correspondence of F to S. That we have also an af and os, hos. So I think we need an H here. We need an A here because we know the AO, the AO alternation is in favor of A in the proto-language. And we know that this gets that the O in Lenethailef comes from something rounded. But what is this? It's a mystery. What is something that could become S and F? Well, F, here's the labialization. But if this were a velar, we'd expect something like hoch, like we have here with anak. It's a bit unknown, but I think we are going to have to reconstruct something fricative-y, a labiovelar fricative. Abidoch, something like that. Hach. Yeah, I agree with Sutton's work here on head and diagam. Yastach. I think so here's a question. How are we going to derive this? How are we going to derive this long vowel here? Note that we have the long vowel in the same place that we have this final stress in Lenethailef. I think we have to put the long vowel back into the proto-language. I think that's the only way. Although what to do for atoma is another question. Do we have any other long vowels? Sutton's working on that one. Yostag. Yeah, I agree. And for this next one, maybe we have Yosta. Something like Yostami or Yostami, because we have this E at the end of this one. So Yostami. The question is, do we want to put the umlaut into the proto-language? do we want to put umlaut into Proto 3? Because it seems that... Oh, I forgot. So this is something that I've ignored. But actually the I is I in Lenethailef. So that should probably help us. Estaima. So I think we want Yostami. So it looks like we have some umlaut in the proto language. So I see no reason not to reconstruct this front rounded this ö. Although what to do with this coil, and this curl, maybe we could put it back. We could just say that it got simplified in Lang 3a. Yeah, they were I before turned to I. Yeah, was that just an orthographic decision or was that real? I forget. Was that an actual sound change? I don't remember. My memory, I tell you. Okay. And then Kelai and Keila. This is interesting. Maybe this is something like Kelai. Something like that. Okay, I to I was an actual sound change. Thank you for knowing this better than me. So let's bring these back, because now we don't have as good evidence for umlaut of a into the proto language. It's a shame. And if we don't have good evidence for a, do we want to also put this into something like kol? Something like that anyway. And then this one, who knows? Ha. Well, this looks like it has to have some sort of qua. But then we have this. Oh, no, that was the wrong one. Sorry. Ha. Haquolia or something. I think this is a good reconstruction of Proto 3 for now. Lenethailef possibly had th to s before p to f to th k to ch. Yeah, maybe that's the... It's interesting looking back. Okay, let's take a look at the actual... Where did it get left? Here it is. There was something. So in Lang 3, umlaut, schwa deletion, P to F go to nothing, intervocalic voicing, final vowel deletion, labiovelars to labials. So this is Lang 3A. Fasp a ayau. Fasp a ayau. Interesting. And then we had Lang 3B, which has got much more extensive changes. And that became Lenethailef. Yay. Yeah. Yeah, so this is one thing. Echoed Words is totally right. These sound changes are from a very, very, very early period. We had made changes to protocol after that, and so that introduces some noise in our reconstruction. And my philosophy on noise is we got to use it. We got to use it to introduce weird irregularities and make us second guess ourselves and all sorts of things like that. It looks like 3A and Lenethailef separated very early. Raven, I think you're right. Because if we look at Proto 3 and Proto Call, Let's go back to the protocol lexicon. We have protocol alupa and proto 3 aluf. Protocol afitoche, proto 3 abidoch. Although now that we see this, we might want to change this to afi, because we have intervocalic voicing of the v, of the f to v. And then we have anakwo. I'm not going to do all these, just to show you an example. So it looks like proto 3 diverged after, or the proto 3 sound changes that are relevant are P to F, F to A, final vowel deletion, and maybe some umlaut, unclear. A bit of noise seasons the conlang. The Ghost of Sutton says to B, PB to FV to 0. Labiovelar to labial. Yep. Labiovelar to labial only in 3A. Because we have unthok from anatochaqua to antop. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. All right, so then the question is, now that we've got our feet on the ground with this language, what are we going to do with it? And I think I'd like to review the suggestions from the ghostly purple square of Sutton. So we have a merger of to and, which is kind of interesting. Both go to a. We have a possible copula coming from oof, oof. Maybe umas can be used as an auxiliary. And, oh, I'm seeing, hold on, I'm just going to put a little brief pause in here. Chat, did the stream go weird for you for a moment? That's a bit weird. Huh. It's back now, though? Okay. All right. Yeah, who knows? There's somewhere along the line, someone maybe tripped over a cord. Okay. How much did we miss? I will, I'll rewind like a minute. So now that we have sort of situated ourselves in Lang 3A, we have to discuss what are we going to do with it. And I think we need to make it a little bit weirder. I think we need to develop some of the sound changes, and we have some great ideas from Sutton here about grammaticalization. So, the ghost of Sutton is haunting the stream, the spirit of Sutton. So I would like to put it to you, chat, and to the spirit of Sutton. Let's change this language a little bit more. Let's give ourselves more weirdness. Oh, excellent. Okay, Moon Truther's got a great idea here. Turn a to e. So let's just write down our new sound changes. A to e. So let's work on it. And I'll off screen I'll do Lexergy for all of this. Oop, I think it was a little loud. Off screen I'll set this all up in Lexergy. Adolf. Jostemi. Ayew. Ayew. Is it time to do a vowel change shift? It's always time to do a vowel change shift. Who's going to start? Which vowel is going to start us off? The raising of a to e? And maybe that maybe that pushes away A. Do we have much A? We have A here. Okay, I like Sutton's suggestion. A to Jostemi ud. Adof. Do we have any more A? We don't have many more A's. And maybe we do some unrounding of Ö to A. So then we can get our A back. Maybe that works. What do we think? Abel. So then we would do, I lost it. Here we go. Do the great vowel shift. We could do it. This is messy. Real life is messy. Ö to E. All right, let's chart this. So before we have sorry, I need a bit more space. So thank you, Sutton. E, U, O. That's where we start. Then if we're going to move, yes, the front roundeds. Give us a little more space. Do we have U? I'm sure we must have U. Okay. So we're going to start chain shifting. So this is stage 1. Stage 2. A goes up to E. And what else do we want to do? Maybe we can... See, I don't know if A going up to E would be enough to propel E out. E is not that bad. Paula says E, U to E. Okay, so what we could do is we could do a rounded vowel apocalypse. So let's put I central, E to E, Ö to A, and maybe E to schwa. E to schwa, rather. So in stage 2, E, A go to centralize. Ö, E go to A, E. Let's write them in the same order, shall we? Ö could merge with E without one unrounding. It could, but then we'd not have an A, and Ö is already at the same height as A. So I think I would keep those together. Okay, I see some other things. So this is kind of a nice system. I want to pay attention to some stuff that's going on in the chat, though. Elijah's saying, let's turn nasal stops into geminated stops. Yeah, I like that. So what about that? So we could have NT to TT, essentially. So what would that look like? So we would have. I noticed that we haven't really touched a, u, or o in the change shifting yet. We can always do it later. But we have I don't know if we want to change this. Eidof, antop, atoma, abel, abil. And this would be atop, atoma, abil, ud, yagam, jostag, jostemi, kilai, kol, lap, lo, ma, a, ayew, u, umas, fasp. Okay. Ship. Let's break the long vowels. Let's do it. So maybe O could do something like ua. I'm thinking of like Irish breaking. Atuap. Atuama. And E could ia. So maybe all of the fronts just jostiami. And the long a, I'm not sure what to do with. Yeah, so or ia to ua. And then maybe long a just shortens or something. Or it turns to o or something like that. Maybe we could do that. Jostog. So then we have alu eidof. Yeah, that doesn't seem super stable. Oh, Queen saying a could go to a. Yeah, okay, that's actually more funny. This is a language that just wants a to exist. So jostag. Jostag, jostiami. Jostiami. Sorry, let's make that a schwa. Jostiami. Kilai kul la lap. Lo ma a ayew u umas fasp. Okay. We are actually at the end of our time. I don't even understand how this happened. Chat, I'm gonna have to bid you farewell. We haven't even finished all this stuff. Okay, I'll tell you what. If you have ideas for Lang 3A, come to the Discord, put them just put them in the Conlang channel, and I will look them over. And next time we come back to this language, we will compile them all together and make this super, super weird. That's, I think, the plan. So I'm going to scoot over here. And I know it's time flies when you're having fun. We were even haunted by the ghost of Sutton today. And I think maybe there's some sort of a time dilation effect with that. But YouTube, thank you for joining us. I think this is a lot of fun. We're making this language weird. I think we need to make it a lot weirder. Lang 3A. All right. So we'll see you next time when we really crank up the weirdness, I think, to 11. Other than that, we will see you next time. And I'll give you the big thumbs up until then. Oh, chat. Chat. Thank you so much. This is fun. We got Sutton to come in and help us out. We finally explained the mystery of the passive case, which has been haunting the channel for months. And just everyone, I would like to thank. I would like to extend a big thank you to Sutton for coming on and being such a good sport and playing along with the goofiness. always a pleasure. We will see you next week when we have something very special planned regarding tone, and we have a very special guest. And if you are in the Discord, you will learn a lot more about it soon. So we will see you then.